Homelessness can now be penalized in US communities. Can it make a crisis better or worse? Anthony heard footsteps approaching from his green tent on a Hollywood sidewalk. "I still have 20 more minutes before I have to move," he cried. He had been warned by Los Angeles officials that if he didn't move his stuff, he might be arrested. They informed him about the recent verdict by the Supreme Court, the most important decision regarding homelessness since at least the 1980s, when many experts believe the current US homelessness epidemic started, permitting states and localities to penalize anyone seen sleeping outside. It's another concern added to the long list Anthony claims he already has. He was resting down in his tent with a blue rucksack serving as a pillow when he told the BBC, "I'm just trying to survive." Inside is a black garbage bag that is stuffed with whatever possessions he can manage to carry from one place to another. He admitted, "Some nights I don't get no sleep. All day I've been exhausted. All I want to do is curl up somewhere cozy and have a nice nap. That's all there is to it. I don't want to disturb anyone." Anthony quickly packed up his tent and set out to find a new residence. Cities all around the nation are already feeling the impact of the High Court's decision, as they feel more confident to implement more stringent measures to remove the homeless camps that have proliferated in the wake of the outbreak. Numerous American localities have been struggling with how to handle the escalating situation. In recent West Coast election cycles, the topic has been central to the agenda, with governments investing unprecedented sums of money in shelter construction and affordable home development. As long-term solutions, such as homes and shelters, voluntary treatment programs, and assistance with eviction, take time, leaders are under increasing pressure. As an attorney for the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, who focuses on these issues, Scout Katovich told the BBC, "There's a little bit of political theatre going on here. It's not easy, and it will take a time to put into place solutions that work. Politicians desire to be able to claim to be taking action. Ms. Katovich and other advocates argue that the issue is that locking up or fining the homeless will simply make things worse. All this does is kick the can down the road. Although a street may be cleaned up, the individuals you arrest will undoubtedly return." 2023 saw a record-breaking amount of homeless people. The High Court's decision last week allowed localities to take more drastic action without worrying about facing legal repercussions. But it did not prescribe how governments and cities should address homelessness. The case started in Grants Pass, an Oregon small city of about 40,000 residents. The city has doubled in size over the past 20 years, but the availability of public and cheap housing has not kept up. The cost of housing surged, and the population of the homeless increased. Laws enacted by elected officials permit the city to fine homeless persons sleeping or camping in public places up to $295, £230, or in the case of repeat offenders, 20 days in jail. After receiving numerous citations that they were unable to pay, 3 homeless people filed a lawsuit against the city in 2018. An appeals court determined that these regulations amounted to cruel and unusual punishment and effectively outlawed homelessness. In the end, the Supreme Court decided that cities have the right to forbid homeless persons from camping outside in public areas. In the majority opinion, Justice Neil Gorsuch stated that a handful of federal judges cannot begin to match the collective wisdom the American people possess in deciding how best to handle a pressing social question like homelessness. On behalf of Grants Pass, Theane Evangelis argued this matter before the Supreme Court. She claims that since they couldn't compel someone to enter a shelter, city officials were at a loss on what to do. Those who decline to use the provided services, according to her, wind up living in encampments. Tent living is not a humane solution, nor is it treating people with respect. The Supreme Court's ruling, she continued, was noteworthy for how much it took such cities into consideration. Before deciding whether to implement the Supreme Court's ruling prohibiting encampments, leaders in Grants Pass say they intend to review the ruling. The decision is made just when the homeless need it most. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development began recording data on homelessness in 2007 and, as a result, last year saw the largest number of homeless persons since then. In 2023, 653,104 individuals were counted as part of the organization's annual survey of the homeless. That is a rise of over 11% from the previous year. Advocates try to avoid making arrests. The ACLU has been monitoring how American local officials have responded to the judgment. After the mayor of Manchester, New Hampshire, pledged to outlaw encampments in order to make our streets safe, clear and passable, it has already written a letter to that city. A mayor in Lancaster, California, for example, has pledged to be much more aggressive in his opposition to encampments in residential areas and close to retail establishments. "We're going to be moving them really fast," Los Angeles Times was informed by Mayor Rex Paris. According to local media, state legislators in Oregon are ready to consider amending the legislation to grant them more discretion in eliminating homeless camps. Leaders in Spokane, Washington, are requesting that more camps be demolished by the authorities. However, supporters argue that fining those without the resources to pay for housing just makes their situation worse. Experts told the BBC that arrests can make it more difficult for them to find accommodation or employment. Chris Herring, an assistant professor of sociology at the University of California, Los Angeles, told the BBC that there is mounds and volumes of evidence showing that having an unpaid citation and a warrant out for arrest, let alone in incarceration, prevents people from accessing housing, jobs in other places. In reality, it keeps people from getting shelter. Not every city has embraced the ruling from the court. The mayor of Los Angeles referred to the decision as disappointing and promised to keep funding eviction safeguards, voluntary treatment, and affordable housing. The city published a homeless count a few days after the opinion, which revealed the first decline in over 6 years. Supporters claim that other cities can take a cue from it. Sasha Morozov, a regional director for PATH, a well-known homeless organization in the Los Angeles region, told the BBC that real change takes time. However, Ms. Morozov pointed out that outreach programs in the larger Los Angeles region are still trying to tell the homeless about the Supreme Court's decision. Teams are also getting ready for a rise in the need for legal services. The homeless are being jailed? A bed will be mine at least. Topher Williams, 28, lives in a handmade tent on a pavement around the block from Anthony. Tarps in black and blue are fastened to street parking posts and tree branches. He refers to the building, which has plywood boards lining its perimeter, as a 3-room apartment. Mr. Williams has been homeless for 4 years. He told the BBC he was a veteran of the army. He was unlucky to lose both his job and his home due to medical costs and the pandemic's financial hardships. He shares Anthony's frustrations with the lack of empathy shown by law officers and city authorities. "The way people look at us is astounding. The direct disregard with which we are treated, as though we are inferior to animals." With tears in his eyes, he remarked, "And they have no idea. I was in the military for 8 years. I served 2 duty tours. It is outrageous that I am being treated like a second-class citizen after making the ultimate sacrifice to defend this nation." When asked if he was concerned about possible arrests, he said that it was just a fact of life. "We already have a great deal on our plate. Many of the items are somewhat distressing. However, I wait to worry about issues until they begin to impact me." Anthony agreed with Topher that getting detained might not be the worst thing that happens. "Maybe I'll be in the system and get the right kind of help, and at least I'll have a bed."